Hello everyone, my name is Tania Diggory. I'm the founder and director of Calmer, and it is such a pleasure to be here today to connect with you all and to encourage you to take regular breaks. So with this theme in mind, today I'm going to be sharing a really important topic with you today to help give you some insights and some steps and some knowledge on the really important topic of burnout. So particularly we're going to go through the 5 stages of burnout, what it means, and what you can do to prevent it from escalating and even being a feature in your life. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and at Calmer we've done a lot of research in this area as well to try and understand how it's particularly affecting working professionals today. And we've discovered, especially through the Winona State University study, that burnout typically peaks currently between the ages of 25 and 44 years old. And not only that, it affects a high number of entrepreneurs and business owners and high achievers. So we really want to do our part to educate, to provide insight, and to support professionals today in understanding what burnout really means. So today I'm going to go through 5 steps with you. Now, this also comes from a personal place. As somebody who has previously in the past, before I set up Calmer, gone through the experience of burnout. It was a really difficult time in my life, and it was something that really set me on this path to understanding what does burnout really mean? Because at the time I really struggled to understand the signs and symptoms that I was going through, which would have helped a lot at the time if I'd actually really known. So it's something that so many people go through. It's incredibly common, but it can also creep up on you and come out of nowhere, especially if you're in the stage that I was in at the time, where I was working a lot of hours. I wasn't really taking care of myself properly. I was going through high levels of stress, and I ended up burning out and also going through severe anxiety attacks at the time. So if many of you have read my book, or if you've read articles I've written and know my story, I talk about this very openly because I really believe it's so important to share different perspectives on mental health, well-being, and understanding what it means to go through burnout and how you can help yourself if you are concerned that you're at that stage. I really believe it's something that we can all get help and support with as well. And it's something that was a huge lesson for me back then when I went through it, when I was running my second business. So that was a big part of what inspired me to set up Calmer, and also to do a lot of research and understand what the state of mental health is like for many entrepreneurs these days, and understand mental health in a broad perspective, because it is a fluctuation, it's a state of your mental well-being, and we can all experience different states of mental health. So today, let's get started on the first stage of burnout, which is what we call the honeymoon phase. So in particular relation to the working world, when you experience or may be experiencing high stress or potentially burnout, the first stage is very often starting with actually something probably pretty positive, whether it's a new task that you're doing, or a new job, or a new venture you're embarking upon. It's very common to feel really excited, energized, feeling quite in control of what you're doing. And there may be some underlying anticipation or perhaps even anxiety around that situation, but it's positive for the most part because you're really excited. You're on this new journey. And you may be feeling all kinds of symptoms of, or signs even of anticipation. Now, with this phase, it can be really exciting, like I said, and actually not necessarily lots of stress levels, but even if you're experiencing mild form of stress, it's wrapped up within, being really driven towards what you're doing. So this honeymoon phase is the first step. So embarking on a new adventure, embarking on a new journey, and it's usually wrapped up within a lot of excitement and anticipation and energy. So with the second step, with that in mind, after embarking on a new adventure, we go through this stage of early onset stress. Okay, so having gone through that first step, the next step is more around, maybe you're noticing slight feelings of stress because the anticipation is built up to a point where you realize, okay, this is the reality of the task or the venture or this new business that I'm embarking upon. I'm still really excited about it, but maybe I'm starting to notice little signs of stress or nervousness or anxiousness. So that can vary from, various different types of signs and symptoms that you could be feeling. You could feel a slight knot in your stomach. You could feel a sort of increase in heart rate. You could feel sort of different kind of fluctuations in moods, perhaps depending on what you're going through. But also, with this stage, you may still feel like you've got a pretty good sense of control, and even if we're experiencing lower levels of stress, if we generally overall feel we've got a good sense of control over a situation, that's a good way to manage your stress levels. So I suppose this part is around, having small manageable amounts of stress early onset. So, it's not necessarily high peaks or it's ongoing for long periods of time, but there's certain situations that crop up. You may experience certain challenges or certain unexpected situations. You still feel you've got a good sense of control over the situation, but at times it can be quite challenging. But if you can manage to find a sense of sort of an ebb and a flow, so even if you are experiencing little periods of stress, you find a way of coming out from that, resolving a situation or managing it in a way that you have a sense of control over. So even if you're feeling those sort of signs or a few symptoms of anxiousness, you've pretty much got a good sense of control. So that's the second step. Now, the third step would be if you're going through longer, ongoing periods of stress for longer periods of time that perhaps are unresolved. And this is where you could start to experience a feeling of not being so much in control. So this stage is called chronic stress. It's what could lead to chronic stress. So long periods of ongoing, unresolved stress that, perhaps just start to become a little bit more the norm. Perhaps you've found that you're losing a sense of feeling in control and that you're identifying what you're going through as something that you can manage. And it just feels like it's happening to you, So maybe at this stage you will be feeling much more of an increase in different signs and symptoms of anxiety or mood changes, etc. So you might be feeling, sort of hot and cold in temperature. You might feel a little bit more reactive to situations rather than responsive and taking a pause, taking a beat before responding. You may notice that, your behavior changes, fluctuate and go up and down in moods. Also things like an increase in sugar intake, an increase in coffee consumption, caffeine, etc. These can all be signs too. Alongside that, it can be a sense of social disconnection or distancing yourself from people just to feel like you need to manage whatever it is that you're going through. So there can be various signs and symptoms when you're reaching a chronic stage of stress. And it's really when you're getting to that place of, like I say, it's ongoing, it's unresolved. And the key thing to remember here is that we're not designed as human beings to be experiencing ongoing periods of stress at high levels for long periods of time. We're not designed in that way. We're designed to have a stress response, which features in our brains, but it's there for a reason to signal something important to us. So if we start to have a relationship with stress where we understand it's a signal, it's something that comes to the surface, it's something we need to pay attention to, but it's not something that we need to accept as the norm, that we just become used to being stressed, because that can lead to really serious illnesses, both physically, mentally, and emotionally as well. So going through chronic stress can be a really, really difficult place to be in. And that leads us to the fourth stage. So this is the stage of burnout. Now, burnout is the result of complete and total mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. You feel depleted, like a car running with no fuel. There's just nothing left to give. It can also be coupled with a loss of meaning in your work, and is a result of long periods of unresolved stress. So this leads to that point where it's almost like you've reached your absolute limits, and it can be a very, very challenging place to be in, and can even take months, if not weeks, to fully recover from burnout when you've reached that stage. So this can signal a much more serious level of distress, struggling in your well-being, more severe behavioral changes, more self-isolation, perhaps more self-doubt in your work and in yourself, higher levels of sleep issues, and that can lead to, lower levels of a sense of well-being. If you're not sleeping well at night, that can really affect how you feel the next day, how you interact with other people, your emotional state, etc. So higher levels of anxiety and mood disorders can be present around this time. And if you're trying to keep going, this can lead to the fifth stage. of burnout. So this is called habitual burnout, where it becomes such an embedded feature in your daily life. And it's incredibly difficult to come out of if you're in that stage and you're still trying to keep going with your work. For many people that I've heard experience burnout, and personally from experience as well, very often your body is phenomenally, incredible really what our body signals to us, and it's phenomenally smart in what it knows. Our body has a lot of wisdom, and there's a term in neuroscience called the mind-body connection, which essentially links to evidence that prove that our mind essentially has the power to either heal or hinder the body. Essentially what we think affects how we feel physically, emotionally, and therefore how we behave. So in this place, your body will always tell you, and for me personally, I just shut down. Like, I had to take time out of work. I was completely in a state of depression for that period of time. I was feeling high levels of anxiety and going through panic attacks as well. And all of these things I didn't really know at the time, as I mentioned before. And it's what I learnt over a period of time and during my recovery, what it was actually that I was going through. So many people have also explained this to me in the past as well. People I've interviewed about burnout, people have shared their stories with me, that actually if you're getting to that place, it's very difficult to function in a normal way as you usually would, whatever the norm is for you, because we all have our own sense of norm, right? So all these signs and symptoms and experiences that I'm sharing with you today is to help you think about what signals tend to flare up for you. And the idea is that when you recognize these signs and symptoms coming up in your body and in your mental state, in your emotional state, to really take stock and listen, because our body is phenomenally smart at really recognizing and signaling to us to pay attention when something doesn't feel right. Do we always listen? Not necessarily. Sometimes we may do. And, it's all learning curves. There's nothing to judge ourselves on here. We're all human, and we're always learning and growing. So the good thing is that even if you reach that state of habitual burnout, there is always a way out. And there is always a way that you can get to stage one, where you get back to that excitement, where you get back to that joy and fulfillment in what you're doing. And there are many resources out there, and tactics and tools and strategies that you can take and embed into your life to help you manage and prevent burnout from being a feature. The first step is really talking to someone, opening up, just admitting and sharing that vulnerability. At Karma, we believe vulnerability is really a sign of strength, to actually share, open up, and be honest about how you're feeling. Because, like I said before, we are all human. We all go through very similar human experiences. And actually, when we take the step to admit that we're struggling and that we need help and support, that's an incredibly powerful step forward towards actually getting the support and help that you deserve. Right? So just think about, who do you trust in your life? Who is in your circle that you can connect with, that can be there for you should you need them, especially in this kind of circumstance where, it might be difficult to open up about something vulnerable. But just remember that we're all in a similar position in this working world that we're in, for professionals, that, we can all go through ups and downs, and we can have really great days, and we can have days where it's really challenging. So the key thing is, the longer we're in that state for over a long period of time, it can feel more difficult to get out of, it can escalate. However, there is always hope. You can always reverse engineer it and get the help that you need. It just comes down to a choice. It's not always easy. I can fully appreciate that, but there's always hope, and that's the truth of it. We're living in the best time ever for mental health and wellbeing support, and we also have a lot of resources through our company Karma that can help you too. One of them in particular is called the Reignite Project, and that is free to sign up to. It's our 5-year mission to reduce the impact and the issues of burnout in professionals by 10% by 2023. So that's our kind of big goal that we want to impact and to help professionals around the world. So you can sign up and receive a 10-week free e-course that we've crafted to provide you with burnout prevention strategies. So that's an example of a first step that you can take. So I hope that you found this useful today. Remember, there's always hope. We can all go through these stages that I've talked about today. It's very common, more common than we may even realize at times. And there's always something that you can do to help yourself. So I hope that you found this useful today. Thank you so much for for checking in and for giving yourself a break in your working day to learn something new, to gain insight, and hopefully take away something positive from today. Thank you very much, and I look forward to checking in with you again soon. Take care of yourself, and here's to your inner and outer success.